What? Hey everyone, how are you doing? This is Alpha Omega. Today, the company we're going to take a look at again is Black Sky. This company builds and launches satellites, and we're going to check out their recent earnings together. First off, they released their earnings in March. This time, they launched their Gen 3 third-generation satellites. They launched it in February, and it seems like the satellite performed even better than expected. They took some photos of the Earth, and they say the images came out really clear and sharp. So, I thought it would be good to briefly compare the Gen 3 satellite, so I prepared this chart. So, first, this is the previous generation satellite, and this is the satellite that was just launched. Of course, Gen 2 is still the main satellite fleet right now. Gen 3 has just had its first unit launched, just to clarify. First, if you look at the resolution, it's about 80 centimeters versus 35 centimeters, so it's gotten much better. And as for the frequency band that shows the images, if the previous one was mainly focused on visible light, this one provides visible light plus near-infrared and even SWR, short-wave infrared images. So, let's look at something else as well. The revisit cycle is also going to be very important. If the interval becomes too long when continuously monitoring the same location, you won't be able to monitor it properly. So, previously, if Gen 2 monitored on an hourly basis, Gen 3 is said to be capable of shooting even faster, in less than an hour. I think it would be good to keep that in mind. Next, regarding the speed of transmitting the footage to the ground, while it took tens of minutes to several hours with Gen 2, they're saying that with this new Gen 3, real-time transmission within a few minutes is now possible. Also, it seems like the areas of application have changed a bit, as well. Since this is visible light, what we used to show were photos and videos that we could actually see. But with Gen 3, by providing some near-infrared swapped images, reconnaissance and strategic analysis have become much more accurate, and Gen 3 now offers footage that can be used for high-risk area monitoring and disaster response. I think that sums it up. So as of now, they plan to launch 6 Gen 3 satellites by the end of this year. They're also saying that they intend to launch up to 12 in total. So, naturally, during the conference call, someone asked when they expect to start generating revenue from these Gen 3 satellites. So what they said was, at a minimum, they need to launch about 4 of these Gen 3 satellites before they can properly provide the service, and that if this happens in the second half of 2025, that's when they expect to start generating revenue. So, to sum up, revenue from Gen 3 is expected to come in the second half of 2025. Now, I've brought some examples of the NIR images and SWR images that they said they would provide. First of all, the wavelength ranges are different like this. If you're curious, it might be good to take a screenshot and take a closer look. All of these capture areas that are invisible to the naked eye in photographs. In the case of NIR, as you can see here, it seems to be mainly used for observing plants and ecosystems. So, it's used for agricultural satellites and environmental monitoring. On the other hand, SWR images are effective for surveillance at night or in foggy conditions. It can do this very well. So, it means it can also detect camouflage. That's why it's mainly used for military reconnaissance and night surveillance. Besides that, it can also be used for disaster response. You can keep this in mind as a reference. The image you see here right now is an NIR image. So, when a village was photographed, all the plants, like trees and grass, showed up in red. You can think of this as a key sample. SWR, on the other hand, this is the visible light image that we usually see, but it can't penetrate things like clouds, things like fog and smoke. But with SWR imaging, you can observe right through all of those. So, just keep in mind that they mentioned they'll be able to provide these kinds of images to customers with Gen 3. And now, there's talk about which existing customer the sales increase came from, but it's from an existing customer. An existing strategic customer has just signed another contract worth $100 million. How long will they be providing the service? They'll be providing the service until 2032. First of all, the fact that the existing customer renewed the contract means that Black Sky's products must have been really good for them to renew. So, I think it would be good to keep that in mind as well. That's a total of 7 years. And, they said they'll be supplying both Gen 2 and Gen 3 imagery throughout those 7 years. So, for now, they've secured $32 million. Revenue has come in out of the $100 million. So, you can keep in mind that the remaining $68 million will come in later. Now, next up is the India market. They've also managed to attract customers in India. So, they said they signed a standardized contract worth $20 million. So, the main purpose of this is Earth observation. They're saying it's for monitoring the Earth, and this is subscription-based. They're saying they'll provide the service on a subscription basis. So, to sum up, they secured customers in India. The next customer we're going to look at is the US National Reconnaissance Office, or NRO, which has extended its contract for another 2 years. Right here, this is Gen 2. They're saying that they're going to use this now. And now, let me read something about the US. EOCL of the US National Reconnaissance Office. Let me explain what that is. It stands for Electro-Optical Commercial Layer, which is about securing commercial electro-optical satellite images and data by collaborating with private satellite companies. So basically, it's a partnership between the private sector and the government. So who is the private sector here? In this case, it means that Black Sky, which we're looking at, is working with the US government to provide images. So this is what they call a multi-year strategic contract program. And we refer to it as EOCL for short. If we look at the purpose of this again, it's about private companies collaborating with US government agencies. This creates a stable and scalable supply chain. What kind of supply chain is it? This must be a satellite image. Just keep in mind that the government is working to expand this kind of supply chain. So, the main goal is to provide real-time, high-resolution surveillance on a global scale. And here are some features of the EOCL contract. The basic term is 5 years, but if they do a good job, if Black Sky performs well, the contract can be extended for up to 10 years. So, the companies involved here are Maxar, Planet Labs, and Black Sky. I checked, and the scale of this is almost $1 billion, so it would be great if they do well. Just something to keep in mind. And just like before, you can see that they've signed another contract with the US government here as well. If you look here, you can see that the DIU, the US Defense Innovation Unit, has also extended its TACGEO contract by several $1 million. Actually, it's not that they won an extension, but rather that the contract itself was extended. Let me clarify that one more time. Now, what's included here? It says that the Gen 3 satellite will be used as an advanced technology testbed. So, it looks like the Gen 3 satellite that was launched this February will now be used to work with the US government and the Defense Innovation Unit. Now, what could be added here in the future? They might also equip it with something called OISL, which is an optical intersatellite link. It hasn't been equipped yet, but it seems like it will be added in the future. If that happens, the performance will improve dramatically. Basically, it means the satellites will communicate directly with each other using laser beams. As far as I know, SpaceX is already using this kind of intersatellite communication. They're using OISL technology, so they use lasers ranging from near-infrared to infrared. Instead of wireless, they transmit and receive data through optical communication. And the speed is usually around 10 gigabytes, with some systems reportedly reaching up to 100 gigabytes. So this technology that enables extremely fast communication is called OISL, and they mentioned in a conference call that they're planning to equip it on Gen 3 in the future. I think it would be good for you to keep that in mind. Also, one of the advantages of OISL is that it offers excellent security. Because it uses lasers, it's very difficult to eavesdrop or interfere with. So you could say this technology is particularly well suited for military applications. Let's move on. So right now, Black Sky is saying that they've kicked off 2025 with a really strong start. So for now, we have successfully launched the third generation Gen 3 satellite, and we are saying that its performance is exceeding customers' expectations. As they started 2025, they also secured contracts worth $150 million. And for the first time in 2024, for the full year, not just the first or second quarter, but from January to December, they turned a profit on EBITDA. That's really great news. As I was looking at this, Black Sky reminded me of Palantir. When we were closely following Palantir, there was a lot of talk about whether they could turn EBITDA positive, and eventually they did. Not long after, they even achieved true profitability with net income. Watching these guys kind of reminded me of Palantir. I think it would be good to keep that in mind as a reference. So for 2025 revenue, they mentioned that it is expected to exceed 2024's by more than 30%. I think it would be good to note that I said it was likely to exceed 30%. Looking at the 2024 revenue came out to $102 million. So it's divided into $32 million and $70.1 million. These are the two categories. First of all, the $70.1 million in revenue came from image and software analysis services. There was steady demand for this from both the US government and foreign government clients. So they made $70.1 million from that, and the remaining $32 million came from the professional and engineering services sector. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Anyway, that's the kind of thing they're saying brought in $32 million. So I think it's good to keep that in mind. But they're saying that this revenue is expected to go up by about 30%. Going forward, the total revenue that is. And it seems like they've managed the company operations really well. If you look here, they're talking about the cost of goods sold, which refers to the cost of sales. Compared to the same quarter last year, revenue from video and video analysis services increased from $65.4 million to $70.1 million. So that's a $4.7 million increase in revenue. But what's notable is that while revenue went up by $4.7 million, the cost of goods sold for this only increased by $0.1 million. So what this means is that Black Sky was able to generate more revenue by making good use of their existing resources. Usually, when you produce more products, the cost of goods sold also goes up, but that wasn't the case for them. So, I want to summarize for you all that this was actually really good news. And the cost they spent while running the company in 2024. They said that their expenses increased from $63.1 million to $64.9 million, but they're saying that this was achieved by improving operational efficiency. In running the company. Anyway, it seems like they're also trying to cut costs. I think they're doing a good job, so let's move on. Next, you can see that there was an increase of $1.8 million here, from $63.1 million to $64.9 million. The main reason for this, they say, is the integration of LeoStella. Some money went into that process. LeoStella was originally a subcontractor that supplied parts for Black Sky. But this time they acquired it completely, taking 100% ownership. They're saying that by doing this, they expanded their satellite manufacturing supply chain, and by strengthening their supply chain, they're aiming to reduce future risks. They say they acquired this company to minimize those risks. I'll explain a bit more about this later. Here it is right away. So, they acquired LeoStella. Black Sky did this to gain full control over satellite manufacturing at LeoStella. In other words, when it comes to making satellites, Black Sky wanted to be able to control everything, so that's why they acquired this company. Personally, I see this as a strategic acquisition to secure complete control over satellite manufacturing capabilities. By acquiring this company, I think it will play a very important role in enabling the rapid deployment of the upcoming generation. 3 satellites. You can keep that in mind as a reference. And as I mentioned earlier, they turned a pre-tax operating profit. They're saying this happened in 2024. Last year, it was minus $1 million, but now it's increased significantly, and the fact that their pre-tax operating profit has gone up so much is really positive. Something you might want to take note of. So, when you look at all of 2024, they turned a profit. I think that's really great. So, what did Conconut say about this? They said the annual improvement of $12.6 million meaning EBITDA, is mainly due to three major factors. First, continuous sales growth, and second, improved profitability, in other words, better margins. And lastly, the third factor is responsible cost management. They mentioned earlier that they reduced the cost of goods sold. That led to significant improvements. That's what they said during the conference call. So, for example, the outlook for 2025 is that sales will be roughly. They're projecting a midpoint of $133 million, with a range between $125 million and $142 million. You can keep that in mind, and as I mentioned earlier, according to what Kong Korea is saying, at least, for Gen 3 satellites are needed before they can start generating revenue. So that point in time is the second half of 2025. So direct revenue from Gen 3 will start coming in during the second half of the year. Just keep in mind that this means the revenue will likely show up in the next quarter or the one after that. And if revenue does come in here, how should I put it? I personally think that the pre-tax operating profit margin will get even bigger. Now, at the end of 2024, you know the multi-year contract backlog, right? The backlog of orders they've received. These guys need to build and deliver satellites to provide the service. They said it was $261 million at the end of 2024. But now, with the contracts secured for 2025, currently, the backlog has increased to $390 million. All of this will eventually turn into future revenue, so keep that in mind. So, with the Gen 3 satellites entering orbit, they expect to create new revenue opportunities. That's what I wrote down here. So, for now, I quickly summarized the key points about Black Sky. Now, the reason for this is that there's another project we need to remember, so I organized the information. This is from October 2024. It's a news article. So there's something called the NGA Luno contract, and here we're talking about a $290 million deal. This is also a really big contract. So this is a 5-year contract. It's a 5-year deal, and let's take a look at what this is about before we wrap up today's video. So what is Luno? Previously, Black Sky had a contract with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, or NGA, called the EIM contract. What was that? It was a project to monitor economic indicators by capturing images from the sky, things like ships, vehicles, airplanes, and containers, to assess the state of the economy. Now, what is this Luno? You can think of it as a follow-up contract to that IM contract. So you can think of this as another project that involves monitoring these kinds of things. In addition, they're also saying that they'll be tracking military capabilities, like where they're moving and such. This is a 5-year contract worth $290 million. So it's a $290 million contract, and it's a multiple award type contract. What that means is it's called IDIQ, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. So what does that mean? A multiple award contract means that whenever they need it, they can request satellite images or AI analysis services from Black Sky. This is a contract type that the US government commonly uses. So just remember IDIQ. So in summary, a total of $295 million, it's a 5-year contract, and it's in the IDIQ format. So the advantage of this IDIQ is that it allows for immediate response to rapidly changing reconnaissance and observation needs. All right, that's the summary so far. Currently, Black Sky stock price is $8.62. It's at $8.62 now, but it almost hit $15 or $16 before dropping back down. Honestly, I don't understand why. Because, first of all, they've turned EBITDA positive, their backlog is increasing, and it seems like they're doing a really good job. They've also launched the new Gen 3 product, so I think right now, I don't think $8.62 is expensive at all. So, I think it's actually pretty good. Just take this as a reference, and if you're interested, I don't think it's a bad idea to consider buying. That's it for today's video on Black Sky, and I'll be back after reviewing the next company. Thank you.